My wife mocked my low income. In front of her friends. After I paid for her MBA, so I secretly left her, on the day she graduated. I'm a 32-year-old guy, and I've always believed in doing the right thing, even when it cost me personally. I grew up thinking that loyalty, hard work, and sacrifice were more than just values. They were the backbone of who I was. So when I met Jessica, I thought I had found someone who shared that same drive, that same sense of responsibility. She was ambitious, magnetic, and effortlessly charming. People gravitated toward her, whether it was her colleagues, friends, or strangers at a coffee shop. And I loved that about her. I loved the way she carried herself, the spark she brought into every room. From the start, I tried to support her dreams in every way I could. When she told me she wanted to pursue her MBA, I rearranged my life around her plans. I took on extra hours at work, cut back on everything I wanted for myself, and made sure she never had to worry about tuition, rent, or bills. "You don't have to stress about any of it," I told her, sliding a payment across the table. She would smile and squeeze my hand. "I'm so lucky to have you," she'd whisper. And for a while, those words were enough. They made every late night and skipped weekend worth it. On the outside, our life seemed perfect. Weekend brunches, long walks through the city, planning her career milestones like we were a team. But behind the smiles, there were tiny cracks forming, little comments that stung more than she probably realized. "Maybe if you earned a bit more, we could finally take that trip," or the faint sighs when I mentioned my own financial struggles. I brushed them off at first, telling myself I was being too sensitive or too tired to care. I loved her, I trusted her, and I thought she loved and respected me back. But beneath it all, there was a subtle tension, a quiet sense that my sacrifices, my time, and my effort were invisible. I never thought the person I loved most could make me feel this small, until that day. By the time Jessica was halfway through her MBA, I was completely drained, though I tried not to show it. Long hours at the office had become the norm, and most nights I'd come home exhausted, carrying a mix of pride and frustration. I still remember one evening, walking into our apartment, the faint smell of her takeout dinner lingering in the air. She was sprawled on the couch, laptop open, headphones on, deep in some group project. I cleared my throat and she looked up with a bright smile. "Hey, you're home. Did you finish the report?" I nodded, dropping my briefcase by the door. "Yeah, just barely. Had to stay late again." "Wow, you're working so hard," she said, almost mockingly, tossing her hair over her shoulder. "I don't know how you do it with so little to show for it." I froze, a knot forming in my chest. "Excuse me?" I managed, trying to keep my voice steady. She laughed softly as if brushing it off. "I mean, it's cute, you know, that you try so hard for us. But honestly, it's not exactly impressive compared to some of my classmates' partners. They make real money." I swallowed hard, a bitter taste rising in my mouth. That was the first time it really hit me. This wasn't just casual teasing. She was subtly, constantly undermining me, even after everything I'd sacrificed. Nights spent crunching numbers, paying tuition, covering bills. All of it seemed to vanish the second she looked at me. The apartment felt smaller suddenly, the fluorescent light above the kitchen buzzing louder than usual. I wanted to shout, to tell her how much hurt those words carried, but I didn't. I left the room, pouring myself a glass of water and staring out the window at the city lights, feeling a strange mix of shame and anger. Even though I loved her, even though I had put so much into this marriage, I began to notice the pattern: subtle digs, quiet disrespect, and a growing sense that my value was only in what I could provide. Every time she smiled and called me cute for trying, it felt like salt in a wound. I couldn't stop thinking, maybe I wasn't enough for her, and maybe I never had been. By the time Jessica was halfway through her MBA, I was completely drained, though I tried not to show it. Long hours at the office had become routine, and most nights I'd come home exhausted, carrying a mix of pride for what I was doing and frustration for the way my efforts seemed invisible. The apartment smelled faintly of her takeout dinner, and the soft hum of her laptop filled the living room. She was sprawled on the couch, headphones on, deeply immersed in a group project. I cleared my throat gently, trying to announce my presence without disturbing her too much. "Hey, you're home. Did you finish the report?" she asked, looking up with a bright, casual smile. "Yeah, just barely," I said, setting down my briefcase. "Stayed late again." She chuckled softly, flipping her hair over her shoulder. "Wow, you really work so hard. I mean, it's cute, honestly, that you try so much for us, but, compared to my classmates' partners, it's not exactly impressive." I froze, the words stabbing more than I expected. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. She shrugged lightly. "I mean, some people make real money, invest, travel. Well, you do what you can, and that's fine, I guess. But it's not exactly inspiring." The words hit harder than I'd imagined. Every late night, every extra shift, every penny I poured into her tuition and living expenses felt invisible, erased in an instant by her casual judgment. I wanted to explode, to tell her exactly how much hurt and betrayal I felt, but I didn't. I went to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and stood by the window, staring out at the city lights, feeling small, unseen, and exhausted. The buzzing fluorescent light above made everything feel harsher, more suffocating. I realized then that the life I'd been building for us, the sacrifices, the support, the sleepless nights, meant little to her. She wasn't just teasing. She was showing me in quiet, constant ways that I wasn't enough. Even as I loved her, I couldn't shake the sinking feeling. Maybe my value had always been measured by my wallet, not my heart, and for the first time, I wondered if she had ever truly respected me at all. The invitation to her graduation ceremony arrived in the mail like a bright little dagger. Jessica was ecstatic, practically buzzing as she showed me the glossy envelope. "Can you believe it's finally here?" she said, twirling around the living room in her heels. "All my friends will be there, my professors, classmates, the whole celebration. You'll be proud of me, right?" I smiled, forcing warmth into my tone. "Of course I am," I said, though a tight knot had formed in my chest. I wanted to celebrate with her, to be genuinely happy, but a part of me felt anxious. I knew her friends, many of them ambitious and polished, would size me up, compare me, and inevitably notice the gap between her rising trajectory and my modest paycheck. The days leading up to the ceremony were filled with nervous energy. Jessica flitted around the apartment, packing outfits, checking schedules, and talking endlessly about her friends and professors. I tried to be supportive, running errands, helping with her final project printouts, and even ironing her dress shirt for the ceremony. But the air between us felt tense, as if she was excited for something that didn't include me. Not really. One evening, she casually mentioned over dinner, "You'll have to keep up with my friends, Don't embarrass me." Her tone was playful, but the underlying edge made my stomach twist. I tried to laugh it off. "Don't worry about me," I said, stirring my pasta. "I'll be fine," but I wasn't fine. The thought of being judged, mocked, or dismissed in front of everyone I knew she admired gnawed at me. By the night before the graduation, I couldn't sleep. The apartment was quiet, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator, and the city lights spilled through the blinds in thin, cold lines across the floor. I sat on the edge of the bed, running my hands over my face, thinking about the sacrifices I had made, tuition, bills, long hours at work, and wondering if any of it had mattered to her. I had no idea that the very next day, all those doubts would come crashing down in the most humiliating way imaginable. Graduation day arrived, bright and impossibly sunny, the kind of day that should have felt celebratory. Jessica was radiant in her gown, hair perfectly styled and makeup flawless. Her friends flocked around her, laughing and snapping photos, while I hung back, quietly proud yet increasingly nervous. I tried to remind myself to be happy, to soak in the moment, but there was a pit in my stomach I couldn't shake. As the ceremony ended and the small reception began, the champagne glasses clinked and chatter filled the room. Jessica's friends immediately gravitated toward her, talking excitedly about jobs, internships, and networking. I smiled politely, nodding at acquaintances I barely knew, feeling a growing weight of invisibility. And then it happened. The words that made everything I had done feel worthless. Jessica laughed, high and sharp as she leaned toward her friends. And of course my husband here has been, well, let's just say he's been trying. She rolled her eyes theatrically. You know, working those tiny hours at that job he loves so much. Honestly, it's cute how hard he tries for me. The laughter that followed hit me like a punch to the chest. I could feel every head turned toward us, eyes narrowing, curious. Some friends laughed nervously. Others glanced away, unsure. I opened my mouth to defend myself, to explain that I had paid for her MBA, covered half the rent, and worked exhausting hours just to support her dreams. But the words lodged in my throat. I felt the air thicken around me, the smell of perfume, polished leather shoes, and champagne bubbles in the glasses. My hands trembled slightly as I gripped my drink, trying to steady myself. Everything I had done, every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every penny spent, it all seemed invisible, reduced to a casual joke in front of everyone she cared about. For the first time, I realized this wasn't just teasing. This was a public declaration that she didn't respect me, that my efforts didn't matter. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. I couldn't stay. Not like this. Not here. After the party, I couldn't sleep. The apartment was silent. The hum of the city outside, a low, constant reminder of how alone I felt in that room, in that marriage. I kept replaying her words over and over, her laugh, the roll of her eyes, the casual way she dismissed everything I'd done. My chest felt tight, my hands trembled, and a bitter mix of anger and heartbreak churned inside me. I sank onto the couch, staring at the faint glow of the city lights through the blinds. Every late night at work, every extra shift, every penny I had spent supporting her education, all those sacrifices, they all felt erased. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to make her feel a fraction of the shame and humiliation I felt. But instead, I just sat there, silently counting the ways she had undermined me, the subtle digs, the casual jokes, the looks that said I wasn't enough. I began to write it all down, almost compulsively. Every tuition payment, every bill I covered, every time I stayed late to make sure she could have her dreams. It was exhausting to see it all in black and white, and yet somehow it felt necessary. If nothing else, I needed to see that I had done my part, even if she hadn't. I remember muttering to myself, how did it come to this? How did I let someone treat me like I didn't matter? The words echoed around the empty apartment. I was proud of her, but I also felt betrayed, belittled, and invisible. For the first time, the love I had carried for years felt like it had been one-sided. And yet, amid the hurt, a small spark of clarity emerged. I didn't have to endure this humiliation. I didn't have to let her disrespect me any longer. I just had to figure out how to take back control. Quietly, deliberately, without giving her the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. I sank further into the couch, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing, heart heavy but resolute. Whatever I decided next, I knew one thing. I couldn't stay the way things were. Something had to change. Over the next few days, I barely spoke to Jessica. She was still buzzing from graduation, posting photos, talking to her friends, glowing with excitement about her accomplishments. Meanwhile, I felt like I was disappearing in plain sight. Every smile she threw my way felt heavy with judgment. Every casual comment a reminder that I had been made small in front of everyone I cared about. I realized then that staying passive wasn't an option. I needed a plan. A quiet, deliberate way to reclaim my life and my dignity. I started small. Late at night, I opened my laptop and began organizing everything. Financial accounts, proof of tuition payments, the bills I had quietly covered, even emails showing how I had supported her every step of the way. My hands shook as I typed, the city lights outside casting long shadows across the apartment. I wanted her to know she couldn't erase the truth, even if she thought she had won publicly. I also thought about logistics, where I would go, how I would leave, what I would take, and what I would leave behind. I didn't want confrontation. I didn't want drama. I wanted a clean, silent departure that gave her no power over me in the end. I felt a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. Fear of what she might do if she discovered my plans too soon, exhilaration at finally imagining a life free from constant belittlement. The nights were the hardest. I would lie awake, listening to her laughter drifting from the living room as she FaceTimed her friends, and I'd feel the tightness in my chest. But alongside that tension grew clarity. I realized that leaving wasn't cowardice. It was reclaiming control over a life she had made unbearable. By the end of the week, everything was in place. Accounts secured, documents compiled, an exit strategy mapped out down to the minute. I felt a cold, satisfying certainty. She would never see it coming. And for the first time in years, I felt like the one in charge. And yet, even with everything prepared, a flicker of doubt lingered. Would I have the courage to actually follow through when the day came? It was during the final week before her graduation that I stumbled across something I wasn't expecting. A revelation that shifted everything. I had been reviewing her emails, purely out of caution, making sure my exit plan was airtight, when I noticed a thread between Jessica and one of her classmates. At first it seemed harmless. Project updates, celebratory messages. But then I saw it. She had been exaggerating how much I contributed financially, framing herself as the sole architect of her success. My hands froze on the keyboard. She wasn't just belittling me in front of her friends at the graduation. She had been quietly rewriting the narrative of my life behind my back. Every tuition payment I had made, every late night, every sacrifice. It was all being spun to make her look like the genius who did it all herself, while I was the hapless, low-earning husband. I remember sitting on the couch, the glow of my laptop harsh against my tired eyes, feeling a mix of rage and disbelief. The apartment felt smaller, the air heavier, as if it were closing in on me. I could hear the faint buzz of traffic outside, the distant sirens, and the hum of our refrigerator, all of it amplified in the silence around me. I thought about confronting her, calling her out, yelling until she understood what she'd done. But then a cold, deliberate clarity washed over me. No confrontation. No giving her the satisfaction. If I left, she would never see me crumble. She would never know the depth of the pain she caused. All her subtle manipulations, all her mockery, would meet the quietest, most devastating form of justice. My disappearance, with everything I deserved intact. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. I realized that leaving wasn't just about reclaiming my life. It was about exposing her true character without saying a word. The midpoint twist hit me hard. This wasn't just public humiliation or casual disrespect. She had been constructing a lie to make herself shine while keeping me small, and in that realization, I felt something stir inside me. A resolve so cold and sharp I couldn't ignore it. The plan was no longer optional. It was necessary. The night after I discovered her emails, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the soft hum of the city outside blending with the low buzz of the refrigerator, everything feeling oppressive. The weight of betrayal pressed down on me like a physical force. I had given her everything, my time, my money, my energy, and she had quietly twisted it into a story where I was insignificant. The realization made me feel hollow, like all the years of sacrifice had been erased. I thought about confronting her, about finally screaming all the hurt I'd bottled up for so long, but I couldn't. I knew it would only give her power over me, and the thought made my stomach churn. I kept replaying that moment at the graduation. The laughter, the rolling eyes, the way she had made me feel like I was nothing in front of everyone she cared about. My chest tightened with every memory, and I felt tears sting my eyes, though I refused to let them fall. For the first time in years, I questioned myself. Was I weak for caring so much? Was I foolish for loving someone who could belittle me publicly and lie privately? The apartment felt colder than usual, the dim light from the street lamps outside casting long, stark shadows across the walls. I felt trapped, suffocated, and more alone than I had ever felt in my life. I even questioned whether I could go through with my plan to leave. Fear gnawed at me. Fear of her reaction. Fear of the unknown. Fear of being alone. My mind spun with doubts, the exhaustion of the past years catching up to me. I felt like I was at the bottom of a pit, staring up at a light I couldn't reach. And yet, even in that rock-bottom low, a small, stubborn part of me whispered that I deserved better. That I could walk away from the humiliation, the lies, and the betrayal. but the question lingered like a shadow. Could I summon the courage to actually do it? Graduation morning came with a strange mix of brightness and tension. The sun poured through the blinds in sharp golden lines across the apartment, making everything feel too vivid, too real. Jessica was practically glowing, flitting around the apartment, adjusting her hair, rehearsing smiles in the mirror, and double-checking her outfit. She buzzed with excitement, practically vibrating with the energy of accomplishment, while I stood in the background, quiet, a mug of cold coffee in my hands, feeling the weight of everything I had been carrying for years. "Can you believe it's finally here?" she chirped, eyes sparkling. "All my friends, the professors. You'll see. Everyone's going to be so impressed." I forced a smile. "I'm sure they'll be amazed," I said, though my throat felt tight. I wanted to be happy for her, to celebrate. But the thought of what was coming, the humiliation, the subtle judgment, the endless comparisons, made my stomach churn. Every laugh she threw at herself or her friends felt like a reminder that I was invisible, an afterthought. I packed my briefcase with a strange mix of nerves and determination. Documents organized, accounts ready, an escape route mapped. The apartment smelled faintly of her perfume and toast from breakfast, and the city's morning hum filtered through the windows, adding a strange clarity to my thoughts. I moved quietly, careful not to disturb her excitement. But my mind was racing a mile a minute. "I can't wait for you to see how proud everyone is going to be of me," she said, tossing her graduation cap onto the bed. "Yeah, it'll be amazing," I said, the words hollow, rehearsed. Inside, my heart was pounding. This day could change everything. I could finally take control, reclaim my dignity, and walk away quietly. But would I actually have the courage to follow through? I watched her swirl around, laughing with a friend on the phone, completely unaware that for the first time, I wasn't just a participant in her life. I was about to take my life back. I waited until Jessica was distracted, flitting between calls and selfies with her classmates, all smiles and laughter. The apartment was alive with energy, but I moved silently, almost like a shadow. My briefcase was ready, the documents and financial records carefully packed, my exit plan locked in down to the minute. For the first time in years, I felt the strange exhilaration of having control. Not over her, not over her friends, but over myself. I glanced at her one last time, her hair glowing in the morning sun, her laughter spilling across the room, and a pang of sorrow hit me. I had loved her deeply, more than I had allowed myself to admit in months. But love without respect isn't love at all, and she had stripped me of that respect in front of everyone, quietly undermined me behind my back. It was time to reclaim what was mine, my dignity, my future, my life. I slipped out the front door, careful not to make a sound. The apartment door clicked softly behind me, and for a moment I felt suspended, like the world had paused and I had finally broken free. The morning air was crisp, the city streets alive with movement, and every step I took felt like reclaiming a part of myself that had been buried for years. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I had left her world intact, all her celebrations and triumphs, but I had taken the thing she could never give back: my respect and self-worth. I felt light, almost unrecognizable, as if a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying had finally been lifted. I knew she would discover I was gone eventually. Calls, messages, frantic texts, but the thought didn't scare me. For the first time in years, I wasn't hiding behind someone else's approval. I was free, and the quiet satisfaction of leaving without a confrontation, of taking control without giving her the satisfaction of seeing me break, was intoxicating. For the first time, I felt alive. But I also knew this was just the beginning. The moment of liberation, yes, but the aftermath, the reckoning, was still to come. It didn't take long for Jessica to realize I was gone. Her first frantic call came around noon, my phone vibrating insistently in my pocket. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times, and then silenced it. The messages started pouring in almost immediately. Texts, DMs, emails. "Where are you? Why did you leave? You can't just do this." I didn't respond. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to justify myself, to defend my choices. or to placate her ego. I imagined her pacing the apartment, the sudden quiet now deafening, the laughter of her friends replaced by panic and confusion. Maybe she thought I had vanished without reason, that I was throwing away everything for no cause. Little did she know, every detail had been meticulously planned. The accounts, the documents, the proof of every sacrifice, every bill, every sleepless night I had endured so she could shine. I had taken my power back, silently, deliberately, and without confrontation. Messages continued to flood in. At first, I felt a strange flicker of guilt, a whisper that maybe I should respond, explain, apologize. But it passed quickly, replaced by a calm sense of satisfaction. She had underestimated me for years, mocked me in front of her friends, dismissed my sacrifices, and spun lies to make herself look untouchable. And now she had no control, no power over me at all. For the first time, I allowed myself to feel the weight lift, the humiliation, the anger, the years of quiet subservience. It all felt like it was melting away, replaced by clarity and freedom. I could breathe again, make decisions for myself, and finally live without someone constantly diminishing me. Even knowing she would eventually find out, even knowing she might scream, cry, or try to corner me, I felt untouchable. The irony wasn't lost on me. She had tried to humiliate me publicly, but the quietest, most effective form of revenge had been mine all along. And for the first time in years, I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. In the days and weeks that followed, I felt a sense of clarity I hadn't experienced in years. The apartment felt lighter, the city's streets less oppressive, and even the simple act of making decisions for myself felt revolutionary. I didn't owe Jessica explanations, apologies, or anything at all. I had finally reclaimed the one thing she could never give me: respect. For myself, for my choices, for my life. I spent the mornings walking through the city, coffee in hand, feeling the sun warm my face and thinking about the future I was finally free to shape. Every sacrifice I had made, every sleepless night, every extra hour at work, every tuition payment, had been worth it in the end, not because she acknowledged it, but because it had taught me my own worth. I didn't need her validation anymore. Friends noticed a change in me, subtle but undeniable. I was calmer, more assured, more present. Conversations no longer felt heavy with anxiety or the need to justify my existence. I could laugh freely, enjoy moments without bracing for judgment, and make choices without wondering if I'd be belittled later. I had survived humiliation, lies, and betrayal, and I had emerged intact, stronger, wiser, and finally in control. There were moments I thought about her, how she would react when she realized I wasn't just gone, but thriving. But I didn't dwell on it. Revenge wasn't in yelling or confrontation. It was in walking away quietly and leaving her with nothing she could touch. Her mockery, her manipulation, her dismissive laughter, all of it became irrelevant because I had the one thing she could never take from me: self-respect. I had loved her once, deeply, and that love had cost me, yes, but it had also taught me a truth I couldn't ignore anymore. Sacrifice is noble, but dignity is priceless. And for the first time in years, I felt it fully. I walked into the next chapter of my life knowing I wasn't just surviving. I was finally free, finally empowered, and finally, unequivocally myself.